Hi Chris, how are you?
Good evening, Rod. Yeah, I'm well here on this very humid day in my very humid shed, which has not got much airflow. How about you?
Yeah, similar. Awful rain showers this morning, I must say. It was biblical. I was almost out building an ark. First thing this morning there was so much rain, and then about 10:30 the sun came out. It's just four seasons in one day pretty much.
All the weather, hey? All the weather. Isn't that a song? That's a song, isn't it? That's by Crowded House, 4 seasons in one day.
Yeah, I think it is. That fine New Zealand band, Crowded House, who had, I think, 2 or 3 singles and a couple of good albums, and then they vanished.
They've come back. They do have a new album very recently. This year, last couple of months, I'm going to say. My kids actually quite like a bit of Crowded House, weirdly, because we had a Crowded House phase. we have different phases of bands in the car as we drive around with Apple Music on. At the moment, it's Oasis, because as is in the news, Oasis are back, or coming back next year for live gigs, so we've been listening to a lot of Oasis.
Did you get tickets?
I did apply, but didn't get any on the ballot, and then I couldn't be asked to queue because life was going on, and I was just, I'm done. Maybe they'll do some more shows, was kind of what I was thinking. So I just thought it'd be a nice retro thing to go and do, but there you go.
Fair play. Should we dive straight in and do some follow-up?
Or we could say it's episode 136, and it's the 2nd of September when this will come out, but we are recording a day early. So if we've missed any major news, that is why.
Yeah, there are. Just before we went to show, there were 2 leaks about potential rumours for M4 Macs and Mac Minis with internal power supplies and all that kind of stuff. But I think let's keep our powder dry for next week, because in the news, we've obviously got things upcoming for Apple. So I think we'll keep our powder dry there.
Okie dokie.
So straight off, for me, we did most of a show last week about me buying a new framework laptop. I wouldn't say I got cold feet, but I just decided to pause it in light of Apple events and money being spent and all sorts of things going on. I'm still going to get it at some point, but it's just on pause for now. And to be fair to Framework, I cancelled it. They refunded my deposit. There was no thing, there was no nonsense or anything else like that. So it just makes me like the company even more, and I will revisit it and get on with it. I would also say I had a slight sulk with Linux where I suddenly lost sound. It crashed in the middle of a Zoom meeting I was having for work, and everything had gone wrong, and I was getting quite cross, and I reinstalled a thing, and then I thought, think about this for a minute. I moved my screen, and all that had happened was the DisplayPort cable in my monitor had pulled a little bit out, and obviously the computer went, I don't know what to do with that. I've got a bunch of input, and that's what happened. So yeah, I was a bit premature, really, in my crossness of all sorts of things. So that's a long way of saying I'm still going to get it, just not yet.
I can understand why you'd pause it, though, because there is potential expense coming. It's the same in our household. Certainly I have a 10-year-old son that's hoping for a hand-me-down phone from either my wife or I or his brother. So I do get it, and you don't know what these things are going to cost. So sometimes it is worth just to be a little bit prudent.
And mixed in with that is the fact I'm going to be in America in a couple of weeks' time, and the chance for buying new kit more cheaply in America is not impossible. So that was in the back of my head as well.
Yeah, that's fair. Actually, your timing's probably pretty good there. So no, I can understand that. I've done the same in the past myself, or I've ended up buying a cheaper model, and I thought, actually, if I waited a few months, I might have got the model I really wanted, which is why I went all out on the iPad this year, because I thought I don't want to buy the one my wallet says. I want to buy the one I really want, and then I won't then end up selling it and buying a slightly better one and losing £300 6 months later.
No, I think that's fair. You have some HomeKit / Eeero follow-up.
Yeah, I don't think I've covered this, but we've spoken in the past how I've struggled to add Matter devices to my home, and I think I've worked it out. My Eeero routers, I had enabled HomeKit. I owned the one range of Eeero routers that did HomeKit integration, which means you could silo off your HomeKit stuff from having full access to the internet or just what was needed and various other bits. But it transpires, my Eeeros had a moment, and I don't know why they had a moment. They've never had a moment in the years I've had them. I had to just reboot them. You turn off the main one and then you turn it back on after 10 minutes, and it sorted itself out. But I removed all the HomeKit linkage because Eero only did it for that one generation. They don't do it on the 2 that have followed it, and they didn't do it on any of the 5 that came before it. So I thought, this probably isn't going to be that well looked after and maintained, and transpires I'm right. I can now add stuff to my home, and it's really easy. My Eero kits all seems fine, so I just disabled it. I like the idea of HomeKit Eero integration, so you could tie down your cheap stuff that could be accessing the whole of the internet and your network, but it just doesn't seem to work that well. Apple haven't done much with it. Most routers aren't doing anything with it. So that was it. I think it's just one of those things. It was a nice idea, but badly adopted, badly followed through by Apple. It's just gone nowhere, has it, sadly?
Yeah, it is a bit of a shame, all that. It's like all the HomeKit enabled cameras and things. They've hardly flooded the market, and again, as we've said a couple of times, Matter/Thread stuff is not setting the world on fire for home automation and things like that. So, for me, I've spun up a new Docker container with a thing called Home Assistant. Yeah, not Homebridge. I already had Homebridge. That was to bring my non-HomeKit things into HomeKit. This Home Assistant acts as like a centralized hub in the same way that HomeKit does, and you can script things and do all sorts of bits and pieces with it. It's quite incredible, really, the sort of sensors you can get. For example, there's a plugin for my Synology network attached storage thing that tells me my disk temperatures in the dashboard if I really wanted to know that. And you can automate all that stuff, so you could, in some future world on this, if I was so inclined, if the disk temperature in the Synology on one disk got over a particular thing, I could kick off a fan, as another automation or something. So you can build in all sorts of scripted stuff. So it's cleverer than I am at this point. I've only just scratched the surface of what I can do. But yeah, I'm interested in this kind of stuff, and it's interesting, isn't it, that a poorly supported product by Apple had led to that problem within your network, and that's not something you'd have leapt on to diagnose. So yeah, interesting.
No, and it's quite hard Googling Eero HomeKit. There's not much out there, and HomeKits, you don't usually get much back. It's a problem where Apple use quite generic names for their platforms. It's hard to search for resolutions. Anyway, so that's my advice to people. I think if you've got one of those, you've got it turned on, I would turn it off because it feels like it's a feature Eero could announce any moment is being deprecated and not supported, because it kind of feels like they've already done it but just not faced into it.
Yep. Moving on, we've had some news about Apple Intelligence. We had a new beta of iOS 18.1 and macOS 15.1, which you'll have installed and I haven't. On the 28th of August, that's how long since we've gone, I installed it on my phone, and one of these stories from 9to5Mac is that you no longer need to set your region to be United States for this to work.
Yes and no. Because
really?
when I do it on my iPhone, I get the old Siri logo back. So I don't think that is correct, because I purposely went in, changed the language back, just left Apple Intelligence alone. I'm not seeing the benefit, because I thought I'd flip it back when I get that done. But it actually doesn't seem to work for me. I had tweaked the US setting to mimic UK, i.e. date format in Celsius, not Fahrenheit, etc.
I did the same, and it still works for me. So I set my region back to United Kingdom. I had done the same when I was on US region. I had pounds and miles and degrees Celsius. But it's still working fine for me with Apple Intelligence. So I don't know what you've done there, Chris.
No, I don't know. So maybe I'll try again. And I've literally just updated my iPad. I've been away. So I'll try the iPad as well.
Yep, working fine for me. Yeah, Beta 3 continues to disappoint.
I think it's the same though with non-18.1, isn't it? All the hotness came in the first couple of betas, and everything post then has been, there's not much in it.
Yeah, I'm trying this week to be a little less down on Apple. I feel like we've been very negative about the company, and this is reflected in a couple of other podcasts I've been listening to recently, and some of our stories here, that we're getting so lost in the legalities and the bad stuff the company's doing that we're not seeing the joy anymore in what's coming along, and it's affecting how I look at this podcast, the news that comes out of it, and everything. It's not a great place to be, so I'm going to try and find a little more joy. Having said that, I do think this 18 release is going to be a bit of a damp squib in a way, because we've got nice new icons, we've got a couple of tweaks to Notification Center and things like that. The Apple Intelligence feature, we're not really going to see anything coming from them properly until 2025 anyway, and a little bit of summarizations. Neither here nor there, really. I mean, maybe we'll hold off talking about some of the features that I have tried for our next news story. But suffice to say, this works for me, but not for you. So that in itself is quite interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. I think that we're just at a point in the beta cycle where they're very stable betas, I think, at the moment, to be fair to Apple. And if you remember back to the iOS 13 days when they released it, and they probably shouldn't have done. So it is a good thing they're in a stable place, but there's not like lots of new stuff being turned on every other week. I think it's on a very slow trickle, which is probably what you'd expect when you're on the 18th version of an OS.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, we've said this a few times, evolution, not revolution by this point, isn't it? I did read a thing this week about how clearly Apple were caught on the hop by these LLMs, in the sense that the iPhone 15 isn't ready for any of this stuff. You need the Pros but more RAM in order to do it. And it seems like the new phones that will be released in a couple of weeks, presumably they'll be released in a couple of weeks, will have more RAM. So the Apple have for this, and the fact the rumored increase in RAM and Macs as well. The default RAM level is going to be 16 gigs rather than 8. This seems to me Apple is just scrabbling to catch up with all this kind of stuff. It's a good thing, as consumers will benefit from finally having sufficient RAM in our computers rather than telling people to have to upgrade them all the time. But yeah, interesting.
I think it is interesting, yeah. There should be a net win-in for everybody, but it's a shame it's taken this event to make Apple just up the base spec after a long period of time.
Yeah. So moving on to iOS 18.1 Beta 3, there's some new stuff as well as being able to use it in the UK. Well, 50% of your podcast hosts can use it in the UK with a new thing. We got some new features. The headline was probably clean up in photos, so if there was an extraneous person kicking around in your images, you can now circle them. Did you try this before you changed beta zones?
I did try this actually. It looked quite cool, but it did have to download first, which it said downloading. I was like, oh, that's new. But I kind of get it. I guess you got to download the latest model that they're using to do that. But I just hadn't seen Apple do that before, where it's got to download something, for a core OS app. But it does make sense, because if somebody never uses that feature and it's got to get the latest model, it does make sense that it goes and grabs it, I guess, from the internet before you use it.
Yeah, I had the same experience. I thought, downloading, how long is that going to take? I mean, there was a progress bar, and then it just sat there saying downloading forever afterwards, so I've kind of forgot about it and went back later. I tried it on one very obvious thing. My daughter, after we went to Canada last year, really likes Tim Hortons. I was in Glasgow a couple of weeks back. I took a picture of Tim Hortons, and somebody traipsed across in front of my camera just as I was doing it. I circled around them and removed them, and it did a really good job of whipping her out of the background. Of the foreground, and filling in a quite complicated thing, I would guess, for the front of a storefront of a shop. Then the miss, that was the hit. There was a group photo that I wanted to remove one person. I circled around them, and it just left a odd blur really in the corner. Didn't do a very good job at all of that cleanup. I think it's you've got to be quite careful with how you draw your circles around people or things to remove them from the picture. But Google's had it for a while now. For Apple's first implementation of it. 6 out of 10, must try harder would be my review.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. It's good they're getting it out there. Interesting, it wasn't released at the top of the beta cycle. Sorry, I was just trying to find a picture while we were talking to try it out, and I will do that later, because it doesn't make for very good podcasts. But like you, I think I tried it, and I was like, it's got to download, and I just left it and came back later. I think it's a good feature. I'm glad they're getting it, because, like you say, others have had it for a long time. Apple has lagged here, but they are massively playing catch up.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a beta, so it's a pass for the moment. That's why it's 6 out of 10. Second new feature is where all apps now can get notification summaries. So to begin with, it was only email, effectively, that you'd go in, Apple Mail specifically, and would give you a sort of 3-line précis of what was in the email you're about to read. Wasn't very good, but there it was. Now you kind of get a sum up of a bunch of notifications if you miss them. This is also a bit hit and miss for me. Like overnight, if I have lots of notifications, I might get a summary of a couple of them, but it's by no means all the applications that have fired off notifications while I'm in focus mode or something like that. So, yeah, again, I can see where this is go. I can see how this might be useful if it prioritizes notifications that are really important. You miss something from your bank or a text from somebody important, great. But yeah, I slightly wonder about the usability of something like this.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I've used it a little bit, actually. Somebody in my family sends quite long texts, and actually did do a reasonable job of summarising it, because it said, oh, look, this person says this, and I didn't realise it was a summary to begin with, because I wasn't used to the little iconography. And then I actually thought it did an okay job. I think the bit where I've struggled more recently, where I've got the dark icons turned on, is if you glance at your phone, and where voicemails are now automatically transcribed, it looks like a text message. Oh, no, I've got a text message from a member of the family. I'll tap on that, and then you go into, and then I'll come back later, and then you go into messages. Oh, where's that text message gone? Then it's like, oh, it wasn't a text message. It was a voicemail recording, because it's transcribing my voicemail, and the icon looks so similar now. I don't know. I guess my brain needs a moment just to recompute that actually voicemails aren't audible anymore. They are just text and look like a text message.
Nobody ever rings me and leaves voicemail, so it's not a problem I've had, but that's definitely interesting. Third feature, US reader restriction is gone. Fourth feature, there's a new beta setup walkthrough. I don't think I hit this last time, but I didn't unenable and enable it again, so it's interesting that they're sort of tweaking that, so when you do turn this on down the line, you'll be walked through exactly what it is. I haven't seen this at all, so maybe you can comment. Apparently there's enhanced tab bar support for iPad OS 18 apps.
Yeah, this is actually quite neat. I think I did it in news, and you can pick what you want to be on the tab bar. I must confess, I often have the sidebar on. Because I've had years of having the sidebar and not having tab bars. So I haven't really tried it in music, which is what's in the example. But I think it's quite a nice bit of functionality, and it's there for all developers to use. So I think it's quite neat that you can customize it so that if you do want it in the tab bar mode, you've got the things that you really use. For example, if you don't use new very often, you can just drop that out there. I think it's cool.
Yep, nice feature. And lastly, if you're on macOS, you can now download large apps larger than 1 gig to external drives. Which I guess if there are some vast apps out there, I don't know, Final Cut Pro or Logic with all of the plugins and all the rest of it, could be particularly large apps, and you can now run them from external drives. But I don't really understand this in one level. If you're running your Mac from an external drive, maybe that's a limitation you're trying to go over. I know, for example, that you can't install the 15.1 Beta 3 from an external drive. It's got to be run on a local drive for the Mac in order for it to work. So maybe it's related to that.
You can install it. You just can't run
Apple Intelligence.
But why make it 1 gigabyte? Why don't you just go, I want to allow me to pick where I install my apps? Like, why does it matter about the size? I just find that a bit of an odd setting.
Yeah, it is odd, but maybe people have been asking for this.
Yeah, maybe. It just seems a bizarre setting to me. Maybe they should ship big enough hard drives.
Well, I was just about to say, some people may be sitting there on a MacBook Air with 256 gigs of SSD space going, I really can't install anything else on this. So,
do you remember in the old days when you could buy a flash drive that was the exact size of the SD card and it would be flush to the side of the case? That was always quite a cool thing. I always wanted one of those.
Bit of a hack, that.
Agreed.
Next story from The Verge, just a whole article on how European iPhones are more fun now. And this is just, we don't need to go into this in any great detail, but it's obvious, I think, that if you've got an iPhone in the EU and you're happy to jump through the hoops to get an app marketplace installed, you can put things on there that you can't have on any other phones. You can put Fortnite on there, you can play a bit of Fall Guys on there, you can download a BitTorrent client on there, you could have a clipboard history on there as well. And this isn't wrong, this is quite fun. You put things on there that Apple aren't blessing, and that's a danger for Apple, I think, down the line a little bit. You've got the staid, boring thing that they'll let you do in the rest of the world, and then you get some fun stuff you can do in the EU.
Yeah, it's quite a fair point, isn't it? At some point, they're going to read this and go, oh yeah, we are going to be seen as, if we follow regulation, to be more fun in other countries where they are where they are setting the standards of what they can and can't do. And we did report last week they've now got a different head for EU app stores than what they've got for the regular app store, which I think is a mistake, because that in my head just means the two are going to grow further and further apart if you're going to manage them separately. And I'd like to see them more converge into one. But I'm gutted that Apple aren't going that way. But it is an interesting take from The Verge here.
It is. And sticking with The Verge, they also point out as part of this that EU iPhones will be able to change default phone and messaging apps. So, for example, if you wanted to use Slack to be your default messaging app rather than Apple Messages, then you can enable that to happen. If you just lived inside a Slack, then you can get one and do that. If you want a different dialer, you can get one and do that, because presumably that's something else that will be allowed in these alternative app marketplaces. Google has multiple phone apps, it has multiple SMS apps. Some have RCS enabled, some don't. So a feature like this is possible on the iPhone now as well in Europe.
Yeah, that is interesting. My corporate head was going, I wonder if you could make Teams your default phone app, that and give people a number there, and that way your mobile numbers, becomes meaningless in essence. It's quite interesting.
Presumably you can.
Okay, well, watch this space. But obviously we're not going to get it here in the UK because we stupidly left the EU.
We've stupidly left the EU, but let's move on very quickly from that. Our story in Ars Technica, Microsoft are going to try relaunching Recall again in October. For those who don't remember, this was the feature that would continuously record your screen by taking screenshots frequently. Then it was storing all that metadata in plain text files on your hard drive. It was obviously an attacker could get in and get hold of that potentially and have all your stored passwords, bank accounts, blah, blah, blah. Although not copy protected films or TV that you might be watching, but everything else that you might be doing. And of course, if you were screen sharing with somebody else or had a Zoom call or a Teams call going on with them, then that was part of their database as well. So massive security flaws, all sorts of poorly thought through implementations of this. They took it back into an alpha for very restricted alpha testers. And it looks like they're going to try and launch it again. Do you think it'll go any better this time?
I'm worried it's not been long enough. That's the big thing going, woo, woo, woo. It's just not long enough. Like, you've only had 3 or 4 months. You need longer to fully bake this, surely.
Yeah. Microsoft has said the database will be encrypted at rest and will require authentication and periodic re-authentication, sounds a bit appley, with Windows Hello before users will be allowed to access it. The feature will be off by default, which is correct. The original plan had been to leave it on by default, but I agree with you. I think this feels too fast. There's no way they've cracked all the problems in this. We know Linux file systems can open up BitLocker encrypted. Is it BitLocker? File Vault. No, BitLocker is the Windows one. BitLocker, without an awful lot of effort, can unencrypt BitLocker sealed SSDs. So this isn't going to be very much of a barrier for people who want to get in. What level is this encryption that's on there that Windows Hello can do? So I'd really want a lot more reassurance about this.
I'm completely with you. I'd rather than go, we're going to take the rest of the year and we talk about it in January or something. That would be a sensible time frame to me. But who knows? Maybe we're wrong. Maybe they have cracked it.
Maybe they have. We'll see. People will start hacking around with it very, very quickly and let us know, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be reported.
Last story, and this calls back to something we reported on, must be getting on for 6 or 7 months ago now, where General Motors said all their EVs were not going to have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. They were going to double down on their own internally built software platforms for their cars. Well, this is a story also from The Verge where apparently General Motors are going to cut 1,000 jobs in its software and services division. These two things don't go well, do they? If you're meant to be designing an in-car experience and you cut all the people who are going to be writing it.
Yeah, it seems very bizarre to me. The two don't go together unless they really are cutting back and going, we're going to have a really small, agile team. We're going to move fast and break things. But you're talking about car systems here. Sure, you need quite a lot of people. I don't know. It just seems very bizarre that they're now doing this. I do wonder what's going on there.
Yeah, it feels like it's not going well, doesn't it?
100%. Yeah.
I wonder if there'll be a step back and they'll just go, right, yeah, we're going to use a CarPlay and Android Auto.
It'd be interesting because software's hard. It'll be interesting to see where they go with this.
Software's very hard. I think that's it for follow-up. Have we missed anything?
Not that I'm aware of. Shall we get on to news?
Let's do some news. Tell us about the first story.
Apple AI is Apple AI. Oh, that was a munge of two words. Apple is apparently trying to invest in openAI, which is super interesting. It does feel like openAI is the one. You know, everybody's betting on the one horse predominantly, maybe just to annoy Elon. But yeah, Apple apparently is looking to invest in OpenAI. Obviously, Microsoft is well known to be massively invested in OpenAI, and the article says it's up to 13 billion Microsoft have put in. So I'd be curious to see what Apple's going to do, because they're not famed for spending their money, are they? They're famed for hoarding their money and keeping their money and keeping all their money and taking as much money off others. But it's interesting here. It'd be curious to know what they're going to do here, how this is going to work with Microsoft, because surely if they're both going to use the same tech underneath, how are they going to differentiate it? You know, what's the secret sauce Apple or Microsoft are going to sprinkle on the top, you know, to differentiate themselves? Or are we all going to end up with the same summarization tools, text generation, image generation? Super interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's prompt engineering is what they call it, isn't it? To be able to get the best out of the LLM features. And OpenAI are definitely the leader on this. I don't think you'd have to be a stockbroker to say, you know, they're the leading company in AI at the moment for sure. OpenAI have got it in the same way NVIDIA are in graphics chips, or TSMC are in miniaturization of you know, smaller and smaller build processes for processors. It's not a surprise, but it's not to say somebody else, particularly in such a new field, can't come out of nowhere and absolutely steal their lunch. So, to me, this is Apple hedging their bets. If they're going to build this into their software in the same way that Microsoft have, they want to feel they've got a bit of ownership of it. So that's probably why they're investing as much as they are. And it shows a certain degree of confidence, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess they don't want Microsoft getting the new hotness before they get it. They probably want to be on an equal footing. I just find it super interesting because Apple are very clear though when you use Apple Intelligence and it's going to send something over to OpenAI, it does prompt you. So it's not like they're trying to pass it off as being Apple's intelligence. They are clearly stating it's a third party. I wonder if they're doing anything similar with Google as well.
Maybe they. Do you think Apple have shares in Google?
I don't know. So they just reinvested 20 billion.
It's just an investment, isn't it? But maybe, I don't know. Interesting. And we'll keep an eye on the story and see what happens next. Speaking of investments, the person that looks after an awful lot of that for Apple is Luca Maestri, who's their chief financial officer for the last 10 years or so. He's announced that he's transitioning away. He's going to probably retire and enjoy a lot of that money. I'm sure he's been vesting from his investments over these years. It's not big news. Companies do this kind of thing all the time, but they've named his successor.
Yeah, this is great. This, for me, he's actually taken a step back, so he's not retiring straight away. He's going to look after internal services like IT and security and things. So he's going to transition, I guess, into a less public-facing role. I guess it's part of his handover plan there to support the new CFO who takes over in January. But it's somebody from within, which is great, isn't it? I'm a big fan of internal promotion. So it looks like this is great. He's not just walking out the door. They're doing a proper transition, proper succession plan. Makes sense. I did read a separate article. There's about 7 people in his immediate team or something that run like the core of Apple's financing, which is super interesting. That they do it with such a. And obviously, we're just talking about GM having going to a small tight team, and it kind of shows. I think sometimes a small tight team can work. It just depends on the size of what you're trying to deliver, I guess, and how well run. Because you can be a bit more agile, I guess, when you're a bit smaller.
Yeah, Keyvan Parekh is scheduled to be CFO starting in January, as you say. I guess this is what Apple do. They do like to keep it internal. The external appointments they've made, like the guy they took from Dixon's to control the retail arm, really didn't last very long. So I think maybe they've learned a little bit of lesson. However, I think this is also a warning for the company. We have occasionally floated here that maybe it's time for some of the senior executives to step down or step across. Doesn't seem to happen very often. Phil Schiller became a fellow rather than leaving the company and still very much in control of the App Store. So you do slightly wonder, is that inflexibility that we see across the company a little bit going to be baked in by keeping these people around as well?
Yeah, they do need to do more succession planning. I think there definitely comes a time when people need to move on. The fact that the App Store still reports to Phil just blows my mind. Like, surely he's done, he's retired, but still very much in control of a massive chunk of the business. I don't know. It seems odd to me.
I agree. One thing that's not odd to me is it's September, and in September we get new iPhone, and Apple have launched their tagline for the new event. Its glow time is scheduled for September the 9th in 2024 at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific Time. That'll be 6 o'clock for us in the UK, I'm sure.
Whoop, whoop. Yeah, that's the best time to have an event. I like a 6 o'clock. I can finish work and I can watch the event. Happy days.
It could make for a frantic Monday to watch that podcast afterwards, but we've done it before.
We've done it before, and they're so tight now that the events don't go on for hours, do they? So we'll probably be on at our normal time.
I would have thought so. I don't think very much of the logo here. I mean, its glow time isn't the best. It's obviously a pun on its go time. There's something to do with the new Siri animation that's going on in this particular logo. I don't read much into it other than that, really.
It's a very nice, sharp image, but glow time, really. Part of me was thinking, I wonder if the back of our Apple phones, the iPhone's going to glow at the back. That would be kind of cool. It's interesting, but there's never much to read into these, I find, because they usually don't tell you much about what you're going to get.
No, and we won't go into this. We'll save it. Well, we won't save it. We'll just talk about the actual phones. But we're expecting iPhone 16, iPhone 16 Max, iPhone 16 Pro, iPhone 16 Pro Max, a couple of new Apple Watches. Maybe we'll get some AirPods, and maybe the announcement of M4s. And I think the M4s won't happen. They'll happen at a later event. I think this will just be watches, HomePods or stereo stuff if we're lucky, and phones.
Yeah, I think it's going to be phones and watches, maybe some AirPods. And I've put a link into all the stuff expected in the new phones. And it looks very incremental. It's going to be interesting to see what we actually get. There's talk of like new thermal design. Obviously, there's enhanced Siri. There's talk of a new camera button. It's going to be super interesting to see what we get, I think, and how Apple tout it all. Because is it just going to be another incremental, which last year was very incremental in hindsight. I don't know. I'm curious to see, because my children go, "Are you going to get a new phone, Dad?" And I was like, I don't know yet. They haven't announced it. I need to see what it is yet. But I'm not in a rush. Whereas I think previously I wanted a new phone. Whereas now I feel like my current phone still feels new to me.
Yeah, it does feel like new to me as well. I mean, what I really wanted was the USB-C hole in the bottom of my phone, and I got that. So I think I'm happy for a little bit. I don't feel. I'll quickly go through the list of things you've put in here. Larger displays. My phone's large enough.
This one, I'm not sure. This might actually put me off, because they're on about the phone that I've got, the regular iPhone 15 Pro. It's 6.1 inches at the moment. They're on about it going to 6.3 inches. So getting a little bit bigger. I don't want a bigger phone.
Yeah. It's if you like a smaller phone, then this is a problem. For those of us that are on the Max lifestyle, bigger is normally better. But I genuinely don't feel I need a bigger phone screen on my phone at the moment. So
So the Max will go from 6.7 to 6.8, so a little bit bigger again.
Yeah, it's growing all the way. Vertical camera layout, I presume that's more or less just down to spatial video capture for Apple Vision Pro and things like that.
Yeah, that's just for the regular iPhone.
Yeah, but that's it. Is to give that spacing out of the lenses rather than, and of course, if you move the lenses around, people know you've got the new phone.
Yeah, if you make the casing look a little bit different, you go, look, I've got the new one.
Slightly larger batteries, that will presumably come with efficiencies in software as well to make the most of the batteries. That's a good thing. You and I both live in the beta lifestyle, and both of us have commented that the betas are killing our batteries, even on the latest betas, so I very much welcome that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Bigger batteries are always welcome.
Yep. All iPhone 16 models will get a capture button. I presume this is like what we have on the Pros now, except I have heard some rumours that it may be some sort of haptics or touch sensitivity to it, so you could potentially zoom by sliding your finger along it, not just purely a capture button. I'm not sure if that's actually a thing, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I don't want to speculate on it. I'm just super curious to see how this is going to be. I love using my phone for taking photos. The current button, the silent switch, I use for it, but it's too high up, so I end up with my finger going across the lens. So super interesting to see where they go with this.
Yeah, I miss the capture button all the time. I want to do a screenshot or something like that, and I'm there poking around vaguely in amongst the capture button, so I don't like it.
Fair enough.
Couple of photography upgrades, which there always is with iPhone models. There's always slightly better sensors or slightly better image processing. In this case, they're saying a better ultra-wide camera lens and a super well, I'm not sure about this. The next rumor is about a super telephoto camera, and they start talking about periscope camera. But we've seen no evidence that the iPhone's actually going to go periscope. There was some rumors of it a couple of years back, but there's been no more smoke about that at all.
No, it'll be interesting to see what they do here. What are they going to keep with the 3 lenses and keep doing what they're doing, where they software do lenses within that? Yeah, it's going to be curious to know what they do here, because I love taking photos on my camera on my iPhone. I do it all the time.
It's just the camera I've got with me. And as long as it does a decent job with that, I'm content enough with it. Faster Wi-Fi, so Wi-Fi 6E and potentially Wi-Fi 7 on the 16 pluses. Not very many people have got 7 routers. Not many people have got 6E routers. So this is just one of those things I think is just to make a tick on a spec sheet.
It's tick box. I guess though, if you're a studio and you're filming and you're going to suck data off it over Wi-Fi, it may be a must-have for real pros, but for 90% of people, it's probably a non-event.
Yeah, I mean, Wi-Fi 7 is more or less the same as gigabit networking, speed-wise, which is really quite cool if you need it.
Yeah, 100%. I've only got 6, and as much as I'd like the new stuff, it's too expensive at the moment, I think, for the majority of people.
Yep. New A18 chips, which isn't a surprise. I think it will be a surprise if that's also in the regular 16 and not in the 16 Pro, them having made the decision to differentiate them. As we said earlier in the show, this is probably all LLM AI related more than anything else.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously, it's caught them off guard. So the plan they had maybe to put a Pro chip in the Pro phone and a non-Pro in the regular phone, they may have had to quash that for the time being.
Yep. New modems, obviously for faster speeds, both for Wi-Fi networking and for cellular speeds, so you get better 5G performance that uses less power. Some more phone stuff on the Pros, including tetraprism lens. I don't even really know what that is. And micro lens. Do you know what those things are?
I think the tetraprism one is just bringing the Pro Max lens onto the regular Pro phone that's there now. On the Pro Max for the 15, you've got a 5x zoom. That's not the regular Pro. There was talk that would filter down.
Okay. More efficient OLED, so that's always a good thing for battery efficiency and things like that, and deeper blacks and more vivid colours and less screen burn and all that malarkey.
Tick, tick, tick. But I can't really complain about my OLED panel in my phone. The screens are so good in Apple devices.
Faster charging, upgraded microphones, better thermals. Mine does get a little hot from time to time, I got to say. Even with the titanium, I definitely feel it's a warmer phone than previous ones.
Especially if they're up in the faster charging and the MagSafe, you want it to be able to dissipate the heat better.
Yep. More storage, which I almost guarantee you'll have to pay for. The base storage I doubt will change, although they are to have increased memory. Better things like upgraded neural engines, that comes along with being a better chip. Thinner bezels, different finish. Apparently we're getting a brown one. I've seen some rumours that the Zune is back this year.
Yeah, apparently brown, but equally they're on about, and I must say I noticed this when I had both my iPhone 14 and 15 next to each other. I had shiny bezels on the 14 and very matte ones on the 15, and the 15 actually didn't look as good as the 14. So apparently we're going to get shiny ones now.
There you go. Reduced lens flare, and as we've said, new colour. So potentially 22 new features. I guess Apple will sell many more than that when they try and pitch as the phones, but that's what's rumoured.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, but like I say, I'm not really in a rush. I think I'm curious to know, are they just going to drop everything we've heard of, or have they got something that we don't know about, which will be good.
Yeah. So we'll stay tuned or tune in next week to find out what our take on that is. One thing that does look like it's going to be happening, and unusually so, is that macOS Sequoia will release at the same time as the iOS 18, and normally there's a bit of a gap between those things. You get the iOS and iPad OSs immediately, and then often we're waiting a month, 6 weeks, as long as that sometimes, to get the macOS versions of the software. So I think that's a good thing.
I think it's good. They're all quite incremental, but I guess they want to get that out so that then when they ship the 0.1 with the Apple Intelligence features, they can go, it's on everything.
Yeah. Interesting. So I guess we'll see. We've managed to get this rumour in here anyway about the new Mac Mini M4 to launch without USB-A. Thoughts on that?
I just put that in there because I love my Mac Mini. That's what I'm recording to you on now. I hate USB-A. I've been trying to stamp it out of my life. I went C ages ago, and I think Apple went C a bit too early, and then they've dwindled a little bit on getting rid of A. It's like they should just got on with it and chucked a couple of adapters in a box. So I'm happy that the Mac Mini's finally going to get a redesign, because we've had the same funny pizza box for a long time now. It'd be great to see what they do with it. I love it when they do new industrial design, because I think they do a really good job of it.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things. I don't see any harm in leaving USB-A sockets. The reason it's got USB-A sockets on it is that design has been the same design since 2012 or something ridiculous like that. It more or less hasn't changed. And when you see the silicon that's inside of that big box now, it could be drastically smaller. Drastically smaller. In fact, Quinn Nelson from Snazzy Labs did this. He put the guts of a Mac Mini more or less into something the size of an Apple TV. So it's possible to do that, and that's really cool. But it's a desktop computer. What is the problem with leaving a few extra inputs and SD cards and all that kind of stuff on there? And there's no good reason to restrict people to USB-C. In fact, if you look at the Mac Studio, it's got USB-As on it. So I don't care that they leave USB-As lying around for a desktop computer.
I'd rather just put more of a bank of C's on it. I think, let's get on with the transition. Yeah, rather than giving me 2 C's, 2 A's, give me 6 C's, job done. Just line them all up. Perfect.
Yeah, but as I look around my desktop here, I've still got USB-A things. I've got an adapter out here so I can plug in this microphone, for example.
Yeah, fair point. Mine's USB-C.
Yeah, it's USB-C on this end. Oh, it depends which cable you plug in, doesn't it?
I've got C on both ends because I'm that guy.
I think you'll find it's a USB-A that you've had add to add an adapter to on the other end of it. I guess you could just run a straight USB-C to USB-C cable.
I just replaced the cable in it.
Yeah, but the cable that comes with it is USB-A to USB-C.
There's a lot of that and it annoys me.
We're getting carried away, but I've got no problem with it. On a laptop, cool. Give me just USB-C all the way, don't care. But I think on a desktop, you've got plenty of room. Stick as many ports on there as you can. Bung on DisplayPort, let's have 10 gig Ethernet, stuff like that we're really wanting on a device like this, rather than sort of restricting it to 2 or 3. And I understand that it's the throughput and the lanes that the CPU can actually deal with. If you've got USB-A, unless it's 3.2, doesn't require an awful lot of bandwidth. Let's face it, you're not chugging out Thunderbolt 4 level speeds out of a USB-A port generally, but it's about the lanes that you've got through to the CPU. If you've got space to bang in a couple of USB-As, why the hell not?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you if you've got the space, but yeah, I'd rather see C's.
Do you want to tell us about the App Store VP departing?
Yeah, so I think I've already touched on this. So the current App Store VP, he's leaving. He's been there a long time. Still underneath Phil Schiller, which, as you and I commented on earlier, is bizarre. But they're actually going to replace with 2 people and have one person look after the regular App Stores we know and love it today, and the one for EU. Like I say, to me, it just seems a backward step in that it feels like they're going to be separating further and further apart. Whereas in my head, I would rather them have one App Store. And they try and bring them back together again. But obviously it's not what Apple are planning. And maybe they're doing this rather publicly to lay down that, we are very much building a wall between the 2 app stores.
So what happens when the Americans make him do another one, and the British make him do another one, and the Brazilians make them do another one? Are they going to have a new VP for every single market?
That's what I'm wondering. Or will they end up going back to just having one person oversee it, and we've just got differences to cater for the different markets? I don't know. I just find it very bizarre how they're doing this.
It is. Another thing that's bizarre, or maybe not that bizarre when it comes to grifting, is Donald Trump has kind of launched a cryptocurrency platform. He has forum in this kind of area where he used to have a university and then got sued for 25, I think it was 25 million, but it might have been $25 billion, $25 million worth of funding for defrauding students. So him launching a cryptocurrency potential platform, it doesn't fill me with, joy that they're doing it for the reasons that they say they're doing it for, i.e., people in America who struggle to get loans, they've been debanked is the term for it, would find that more easily they could have a decision in minutes to be given a loan to buy their house or to do whatever it is that they wanted to do. Cryptocurrency isn't about that. Cryptocurrency is about building up more cryptocurrency, and so I don't think there's a whole story here. It just feels like a grift to me.
It feels very bizarre. I don't know. I really don't understand. And I also wonder, if you're going to be president and you're in the run-up to be a president, presidential candidate, are you allowed to do stuff like this? I don't know. Is this surely going against you being, you should be an impartial president? Whereas, surely if you set up your own form of bank/cryptocurrency, are you going to then pass some laws to help you get this done? I don't know. It all feels a bit icky.
Yeah, I remember the first time he was president, they're meant to put all their business dealings into a trust to be managed entirely by somebody else, and that didn't happen entirely, as I recall. Some of it was handled by his sons and the rest of it. I think he was still very, very much involved in the day-to-day running of the Trump organizations. I agree. It's not right.
No, it just feels a bit, let's go with icky.
Yeah. Another thing that's icky is Microsoft breaking dual boot Linux machines. So this was just after we recorded the first of our episodes a couple of weeks back. Microsoft put a patch on a patch Tuesday, and a load of Linux users went to boot into the Linux partitions, and it wouldn't let them because of a security shim in the grub bootloader. So the long and the short of it is they were breaking people's installed Linux, and you could get back into it, and there's since ways of fixing it, but that's pretty naughty, Microsoft. It's a flaw. It was a 3-year-old security flaw that they finally got around fixing, and that's what broke this. It just feels like they're getting their scoring own goals all the way around at the moment, Microsoft.
Yeah, I do wonder though. I'm guessing they've got some stats. How many people are dual booting into Linux? But I guess it's not an insubstantial amount.
Well, desktop Linux is 4% market share now, apparently. So that's quite a lot of computers, really. I mean, it's if you remember back in the bad old days when Macs were 2.4% or something like that, they're probably still not far away from that. That's still an awful lot of machines. And given the interest that things like the Copilot and Recall features have had from... Certainly there's been an explosion of why would I switch or how can I switch to Linux videos on the YouTube channels I watch. I think people are Linux curious. You've had a go recently. So, I'm not suggesting this is deliberate, but this would put you off, wouldn't it? Oh, the new operating system installed, I can't boot into it, whereas the Windows one still works fine. So,
I agree with you. It's probably not an insubstantial amount, but come on, Microsoft, where's your quality assurance testing?
Yeah, Microsoft would rather you ran the what's it called, WFL, Windows for Linux subsystem, Linux for Windows subsystem. The thing that sits within. Yeah,
I'd forgotten about that. I forgot that was a thing. Are they still maintaining it?
Yeah, they still maintain that. You can go from the command line, you can install the base Ubuntu or any of the sort of more popular distributions within Windows, and then make use of that. So yeah, it's still a thing.
Okay.
Anything else in the news?
No, I think we're there.
Good stuff. Should we do some media?
Let's do it.
Tell us about Ted Lasso.
So apparently, which was quite news to me, apparently they're exploring doing cast negotiations for Ted Lasso Series 4. I didn't think we were going to... season. I didn't think we were going to get another season of Ted Lasso, so this is quite exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously early doors yet if they're just doing cast negotiations and all the rest of it. The little sort of bit of reading I did around this was there might be more sort of vignettes focusing on some of the characters and spending a bit less time with Ted because Jason Sudeikis has got other things to be getting on with these days. But this is good. More Ted Lasso is good. Yeah,
and apparently it's got Hannah Waddingham in it, Brett Goldstein, Jeremy Swift, which they are 3 great characters. So, yeah, I'm super curious to see where they go with this. I hope they do something, but equally, I don't want them to do if it's going to be good. Don't ruin it.
Have you seen the film Major League?
No. Sorry, I was waiting for you to say another word after Major League. No, I've not.
No, Major League is the name of the film.
Okay.
It's a baseball film starring Charlie Sheen, Tom Berenger, and Corbin Burnson from the certainly late 80s, maybe early 90s, and Wesley Snipes in one of his first film roles. I happened to stick it on the other day. It's basically Ted Lasso.
Is it really?
Kind of. The plot of the owner who wants the team to do really badly for personal reasons
Right, okay.
is exactly that, and appoints a coach and appoints some bad players in order that they'll do very badly in the league. Yeah, it might be worth a watch actually as a revisit. I was getting very strong Ted Lasso vibes off it anyway.
I was just looking for it on the iTunes store and it doesn't seem to be there. I'll have to go and have a look in, see if it's on Amazon or Netflix or what have you.
Check it out. Anyway,
Will do.
So I watched most of Major League. It stood up. It's not bad. It's all right. I also managed to catch Inside Out 2. Myself and the family saw that. Pretty good.
I love it.
I don't think it was pretty good. I don't think it's as strong as the first one.
I'd possibly love it for different reasons. I've got a child who's just about to turn 13, which is the same age as the child in Inside Out 2. And so for me, there was a lot of things that rang true. And I think that's why I loved it. I got to watch it with my son, which was nice. I think it's a good film. I wouldn't disagree. The first one was very good, how they set up the world and got you into it. I think 2 was a great follow-up because it can be hard to do a great follow-up to a film. So I think they did a good job.
Yeah, absolutely. 9 out of 10 for effort. Not as good as the first one, but the first one was absolutely stellar, so that's fair enough. Not a bad film. I did enjoy it. I just don't think it was quite as strong as that, and not as strong as I think some people had been reporting for me. But as far as Pixar sequels have gone of late, it was pretty good.
Yeah, and it's always tricky, isn't it, when a film's overhyped, that it will never live up to that if you're later to the game to see it. It's like you've had so much hype around it, it's never going to live up to the expectations. Now, I thought it was good, and I am nervous about Disney owning Pixar. Are they going to make Pixar make loads of sequels that aren't up to the standard? And this didn't feel like that.
No, we got 4 Toy Stories.
There's on about a 5th.
I haven't watched the 4th one yet. No.
Disappointed.
Okay. Moving on. Despicable Me 4. I've seen 2 of the Despicable Me films. I didn't know they'd go up to 4.
They have. I'm not a big fan of all of them. I like the first one a lot. Again, it was setting up the world. I thought it was very good. The 4th one I sat watching with my kids. I said it was very good. I think we commented on that before. The reason I put it in here though is you can already buy it, and yet it's still at the cinema. And they've seem to have done the opposite of Inside Out, where Inside Out 2 is at the cinema for like 100 days before it'll be available anywhere else. Whereas Despicable Me 4 feels like it had more like 10 days at the cinema. It's probably a bit longer than that. And then it's out to buy. And it just feels like if you want the cinemas to do well, you need to increase their time of exclusivity. Then you need to do a buy window, and then you need to do a stream window. That's my view. But I think Inside Out 2 have got it right. And I think Despicable Me 4 maybe rushed out a bit to be able to download.
Is it a weaker film than Inside Out 2?
100%.
So potentially they're just trying to capitalize on people buying it rather than go to the cinema because they know it's not going to have the duration of an Inside Out 2.
Yeah, I can see that. My son, though, my 13-year-old son that we just mentioned, absolutely loved it and was very up for watching it again.
Fair enough. Slow Horses Season 4.
Comes out on Wednesday. That's all I wanted to say. It looks amazing. And Gary Oldman again has said he wants to play that character till the ends of time. So, which bodes well because they're halfway through. So I'm looking at my shelf. There's 8 books in total. This will be the 4th book. So it's great they're doing it. I hope they're going to carry on with the other 4. And it's really stand out on Apple TV as a series. Yep. I think it stands up well.
I'd agree. I think it's a great series. I speak to people who are definitely not Apple people, and they will get Apple TV just for watching Slow Horses. It's that good. It's got that recommendation and that brand recognition. So fair play. And I really hope the cast gets some recognition at last for the work that they're doing in that, particularly Gary Oldman. And actually the rest of the cast are incredibly strong as well. So yeah, more please.
100% agreed.
Yep. Is it going to clash if it's out on Wednesday? Is it going to clash with Race Across the World? I think it is.
Quite possibly. I haven't thought that far ahead, but it's all on demand, isn't it? So you can watch it whenever you want.
It is. Also, the Grand Tour, which is Clarkson, May and Hammett's sequel to Top Gear that has been on Amazon Prime for a while now. The very last episode of that, One More for the Road, it's called, isn't it?
Yeah, One for the Road.
One for the Road is coming out on the 15th of September.
I was really disappointed in the trailer. I should put a link into it, but it just sounded very sad. Whereas you kind of want it to be a bit, I was hoping the trailer was going to be sad for about half of it and then switch gears and be jokey and jovial, but it didn't happen. So the trailer was a bit of a downer for me, but I'm sure we'll be watching it in my household.
Oh yeah, we'll be watching it. I have read that they're going to finish where the very first Africa one started. They're going to go back to Zimbabwe, and sort of finish right at the beginning of where the special started on Top Gear way back in the day. So I think that's quite a nice sort of full circle. They're going to go there.
Yeah, that's quite good. And it is a shame it's come to an end, but all things must come to an end.
All good things end. Something continuing to go and is definitely a good thing is Taskmaster Series 18. The date has been announced for that. It's quite a good cast, including Jack D and Babatunde are going to be on that. So I'm really looking forward to Taskmaster Season 18. And I've lost the date now of when it's... There we are. Thursday the 12th of September. So that's not long to wait.
Has Jack D not done it before?
No.
Okay. I know it was Babatunde.
Neither is Babatunde. Andy Saltzman, I'm a Celebrity and Celebrity Gogglebook star Babatunde. Star Trek and Ghost actress Emma Siddy, I don't know who that is. Stand-up comic Jack D, Rosie Jones, and yeah, that's a great lineup. I'm looking forward to this.
Cool. No, I'm looking forward to it. My kids love it. So again, I love anything that I can watch with my family. So yeah, that'll be good.
Yep. And last but not least in media, you often bring up albums that you've been waiting for that have been announced. I'm going to talk about Nick Cave's new album, which is called Wild God. Nick Cave has been through a lot in the last few years. I don't know if you're not a fan of his work. He has been around for a very long time. Started in the post-punk era with his first band. Went on out of the ashes of that to form Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, and has had a couple of spin-offs as well. He's a very creative person in the sense that he's done film soundtracks, he's written books, he's done scripts for films, has an amazing back catalogue of songs. The most famous of which is probably Red Right Hand, which was the theme tune for Peaky Blinders. Have you ever watched any of that? That was Nick Cave. If you've never watched Peaky Blinders.
No.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, you'll have heard the song. It was featured in the X-Files as well, Red Right Hand. Fantastic artist. I can't even just call him a musician anymore. Anyway, over the last 3-4 years, he lost his father when he was 9, Nick Cave. He's had 2 sons die, including a 16-year-old who took a very long walk off a short cliff in Brighton, unfortunately. And one of his original bandmates has also died all in the last couple of years. So he's been through some trauma, Nick Cave. His last couple of albums have been understandably very sad. All that's been reflected in his music. But this one, Wild God, has an awful lot of joy in it and of him seeing the future as well. And I think it is a glimpse into a man's life and pain and sort of his progression as an artist. And he's 66, I think now, Nick Cave, maybe a little bit older. It's just a phenomenal work and well worth listening to. So that's my recommendation: is Nick Cave, Wild God. And I've got tickets to go and see him next year. So I'm really excited about that too.
And you got his age 100% correct?
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. But if you're a fan at all, give it a whirl.
And it is kind of the joy of streaming, isn't it? You can pick up any album and give it a whirl, as you say.
Yeah. Should we do some games?
I think it's largely with you because I don't think I've played it. I've been on holiday again, so I've not played any. But interestingly, you've put a link in here, which I should have put in here because I did look at this a couple of weeks ago. It's an article to the top 50 games, and it was in the Top Gear magazine. And I did scroll through this just to have a look at it because it's the top 50 driving games. And I don't know where you want to start. Maybe we should just cover the top 10 and talk around them. But it did bring back quite a few memories for me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it's decided not to open. Unfortunately, everybody, this is a link to an Apple News story. It's not opening for me, so I will let you read out. Let's just do the top 10. Go for it.
So I don't necessarily agree with the first one, but coming in at number 10, they've got Rocket League, which I know my 10-year-old son would agree with because he plays it all the time. I'm not sure I call that a driving game. That's football with 4 wheels, but that would be my view.
It's still a driving game. I've a bit of time for Rocket League. I didn't play that much of it, I will be honest. But, it's got cars. It's got football as well. That's 2 things most... Certainly young boys like, that's for sure. I think I'm an odd one out and I don't like the football part of it. But yeah, it's valid. It's been around a long time, Rocket League. You can upgrade your car. What more do you want?
Yeah, I've just had to load my son up with £7 so that he can buy some more skins. Because Blink 182 apparently are now in sponsorship in Rocket League. There you go. But coming in at number 9, this is one I can get behind, is Colin McRae Rally, number 1. Came out in 1998 on the PlayStation. What a game. I played this on the PC. I was very much a PC guy back then. Fantastic game. Love this.
Yeah, it is a strong one, this. And, the game the rallying game all became known as, Colin McRae. Basically, if you were playing rallying on a computer of any sort, you expected to see the Colin McRae brand attached to it. This was Codemasters, was it, I think, that released this? Yeah. It was a great game. It was classic. It had a co-driver. It had challenging tracks. It had semi-realistic car handling. It was just a terrific game.
Fantastic. And obviously went on and sadly it's become more arcade, I think, as it's grown into the Dirt franchise. But the first one was amazing. And next up in at number 8, we've got GTR 2, FII GT racing game, which I didn't play. It's not one I've heard of, but the screenshot they've got of it looks amazing for a 2006 PC game.
Yeah. I'm going to let you move on, Chris, because I can't.
No, that's fine. So in at number 7, though, we've got Daytona USA, which I do remember playing this in the arcade. Probably not a fantastic game, but it was in arcades and you always wanted to have a go on Daytona.
Yeah, it was very flashy, wasn't it? And I had this for my Sega. It wasn't a Mega Drive, Dreamcast. No, Saturn. I had it for the Sega Saturn, and it translated almost perfectly from the arcade to home console. It was a great game. I remember playing it a fair bit on home console. I had a couple of goes in the arcade, but yeah, again, looked fantastic. Amazing sounds, good graphics for the day. Really good game.
And then in at number 6, Burnout 3 Takedown, which I do remember playing on my PSP, so Sony PlayStation Portable. We used to take them in the office and play on our lunch breaks, and it was great fun just to, drive into each other in the office and you score points and that. It was really good. So that was a good game as well. This one's mentioned the PlayStation 2 and Xbox back in 2004. Then in at 5, which is of no surprise, is Forza Horizon 4. I know the Forza series is really strong. I've never played them. Have you?
Yeah, I have. I've played a couple of the Forza games. One of the reasons I wanted an Xbox, actually, was to try out Forza. The sort of gimmick they had were, well, for a while, you could play the Top Gear test track on it. So they had a join-up with the Top Gear, BBC Top Gear, where you could race cars around, Dunsfold, which is where they filmed Top Gear. And that was quite cool. And they had Jeremy Clarkson doing some of the commentating on it, and Hammond would say things occasionally. It was quite cool. I think they had Chris Harris in the last version I played, so they sort of maintained that Top Gear link. Sort of standout feature with it was you could rewind as well. If you really messed up that turn and you wanted to go back just as you were in the race, you could hold in a button and run it back a little bit, and you'd get 3 rewinds per race, so you could make yourself. Others made use of this too. I don't think it was original to the Forza games, but pretty good car dynamics, it handled really well, really sharp graphics. And then I think it was that integration with other media. They were quite sharp with working with Ken Block and people like that, working with Top Gear to bring in the sort of logos and personalities who were super into cars, and that was really cool.
Yeah, that is cool. That'd be my only reason for getting an Xbox, I think, is probably to play that game and Flight Sim. It does look cool. I will bet £10 that you've played the next game.
I've managed to get the link open now, and yes, I have seen Outrun. And played Outrun. Not only did I play it in the arcade when it was new, and it was super cool to drive your Ferrari along California with the blonde girl next to you in the car, which of course is highly inappropriate to say these days, but this was the 80s, I guess, when it came out. 86, I think Outrun came out. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, Outrun. Not the most challenging game in the world, I got to say, but yeah, it was just it was enjoyable to be able to play this kind of thing.
Yeah, I've played it on my brother's Atari ST in the 80s too. I would just like to say well done to the person who designed the prancing horse on the back of that Ferrari, because it is very distinguishable that it is a Ferrari. So with those limited pixels you had, they did a good job, I think.
They did a great job. That looks like a Ferrari, doesn't it?
Yep, 100%.
Now, that gets a bit controversial for me now. If you're talking about, I know you and I might go back and forth on this. Number 3 is Super Mario Kart on the SNES, and I think the Super Mario Kart games are just phenomenally good.
I completely agree. I've never played really many of them other than the latest one, which I've played to death. And it's a great family game. Even my wife will play with because you can have all 4 of us on one screen. So I would, Super Mario definitely, as a series of games, definitely up there for me.
Yep, definitely. So I'd put this at 2. However, the game at 2, Rally Championship. Again, I played on my Saturn. Oh my gosh, I spent so many hours on this just trying to get my HF Integrale to go like 0.1 of a second faster around the course. It was a truly terrific game. I spent more time on this than any other game except the number 1, I think, playing Sega Rally Championship. There weren't many good games for the Saturn. I think I only had 5 or 6, including the aforementioned Daytona USA. But this just dominated my life. It was so bad, my addiction, I had to give my console to somebody else to take it away so I'd stop playing it and go on with doing my nursing qualification. And he got incredibly addicted. So it really was gaming crack, Sega Rally Championship.
Yeah, I can understand that. I had the same problem with a snowboarding game on the PlayStation 2. I think I've played it a lot. Sega Rally, again, another one of those games that was just fantastic. very much iconic game.
but lacked that multiplayer that you got with Mario Kart, and that's why I'd have put Mario Kart higher than Sega Rally. But yeah, what a game.
Wouldn't disagree. And then in at number 1, everybody's favourite, Gran Turismo. Definitely gets my vote. I love this game.
Yeah, so I bought a PlayStation because of Gran Turismo. I went round to a friend's house, he had Gran Turismo, I sat doing the original driving tests, start here and brake by the end line and all the rest of it. And yeah, I was captivated. There were real cars. I like playing with the silly little cars rather than all the hyped up supercars. I wanted to race, I don't know, Toyota Corollas or something around a circuit rather than the Ferraris or the Lamborghinis or whatever else was in there. I learned a lot about cars. It was good tracks. It wasn't any realistic tracks, I don't know, not in the first Gran Turismo. It was all made up tracks for the first Gran Turismo. They brought in, I can't even remember the names of the tracks at this point, but Motegi or whatever else, Suzuka in later iterations of the game. But yeah, this was an amazing game, the first Gran Turismo.
Amazing, and has carried on, and it's realism in cars. And now I can't remember what the ratio is of real tracks to make fictitious tracks is, but the tracks in the current one are amazing. I've been playing Monza on it, and I watched the Monza Grand Prix today, and it was great because I knew the track inside out because I've played Gran Turismo so much. I want all the F1 circuits to be in Gran Turismo because I play it so much. I've got the F1 game, but I prefer playing Gran Turismo.
Fair enough. Just a very quick mention, moving on. That's a fun list, that. And someday I'd like to go through some of the older games, but maybe we'll do a different podcast for that. Peter Molyneux, we've talked about a few times now. X of Bullfrog, Magic Carpet, Dungeon Keeper, Populous et al. Is back. It looks like he's going to produce a new God Sim called Masters of Albion. Stripped down black and white kind of thing. I don't think we need to go into it in detail. I'm just glad that he's back. He was a good software developer. He made some really classic games back in the day. I hope this is successful.
Yeah, I never really played black and white that much, but I know it was popular. I think you might have played it quite a bit. Yeah, I'm hoping I'm looking forward to trying this out. I need to try some new games, as we know. So hopefully this will make the cut.
Yep. And lastly, Tactical Breach Wizards. I talked about at Steam Next Fest. There was a demo for Tactical Breach Wizards. I'd played the first level. Quite amused by the humour, sort of an XCOM meets Lord of the Rings or something styly. I bought the full game. It was on offer as it was released. I think it was £50. Works fine on Linux and Windows. Yeah, it's funny. It's definitely got a British sense of humour. Definitely got an XCOM vibe to the way things go. It's quite forgiving. It's got a nice rewind mechanic, so you can go back if you mess up and run through it again. I have put it on my Steam Deck. I haven't played it yet, but I think it should probably work all right on that. Some of the text might be a bit small, but yeah, a lot of fun. I think it's worth checking out Tactical Breach Wizards if you want to try something a bit different.
Yeah, definitely got XCOM vibes. Looking at some of the screen grabs, looks great.
Yeah, it is great, and it's definitely got a real problem with chucking people through windows. They use the word defenestrate an awful lot, which I like. I appreciate a bit of that kind of humour and things. And yeah, not bad. Tactical Breach Wizards, check it out.
Okay.
Anything else in games?
Not for me.
Right, a shortish main show, I think. We're obviously keeping our powder dry for the Apple event next week, but just some things I wanted to report back on as much as anything else. One is a thing that I haven't seen anybody else talk about in the beta. Probably I'm the only person who takes pills, so I might be the only person that's noticed it. But before I get to that, I want to talk about using Google Maps on public transport. So I don't know how often you use public transport for Google Maps. Are you entirely an Apple Maps user?
Don't really use a lot of public transport. Only the underground, and I never really look. I just turn up at a station and wait for a train.
So I've been using a lot of public transport recently because obviously I went to London with my daughter to watch Mike Hurley and co.
Relay is 10.
To watch Relay's 10th. I was in a part of London I wasn't familiar with, and everywhere was by bus. There was no underground routes up from Canary Wharf to Hackney. So I was using Google Maps because it's generally better at that kind of stuff than Apple Maps. And I just wanted to comment on how good it is now. You hop on a bus, you say start journey, and it gives you in your live activities on your iPhone updates 9 stops left, 8 stops left, 7 stops left, how busy the bus is when you get on it, where the best place to sit might be. When you're about to get off the bus, it gives you a little ding or vibration on your watch to say you're getting off at the next stop now. It's super accurate.
That's quite cool, isn't it? That sounds pretty cool.
For lots of reasons. If you're part of town where you don't really want to be seen to be checking your phone all the time for how far you've got to go, which is increasingly less all grand, but having that sort of flexibility is phenomenally good.
Yeah, and how often are you on there and your children are like, how many more stops? Obviously your children are older than mine, but how many more stops have we got to do? And it's nice when they can see it counting down and stuff. I think that's great, especially if you don't know where you're going.
Yep. So it worked in London. We went across to Shoreditch afterwards. I did exactly the same thing there on a bus. What stop to stand out on the bus stops, what directions to face, what the numbers were, how far away it was if there was a delay. I was just super impressed with the updates, the interface, and how well it kept you informed of what was going on for those kinds of travel. And just to add to that, I was in Glasgow last week and went a couple of stops on the Glasgow Underground. It's not very complicated, the Glasgow Underground. It just goes around in a circle.
I've been on it.
Yeah. But it managed to do the same thing underground, which how the hell it did that, I do not know. But I was super impressed with Google Maps.
Maybe I should try it out as I am going to London tomorrow morning.
The critical thing is to start Journey, and then it's very, very up to date with what's going on. I've been really impressed with it. So a proper shout out to give Google some kudos that this is something that Apple Maps, it does do public transport, but I think Google Maps does a far better job of this kind of stuff, of getting on and off buses in cities that you're not familiar with. The walking directions is generally slightly better than Apple's, I will say, and we've already criticised Apple for the lack of cycling, inside of Apple Maps. So this is definitely a win for Google Maps.
Yeah, I'm installing it as we speak, so I will report back next week.
Good stuff. Second topic. Apple obviously may have made changes for iOS 18. If you do take regular medication or vitamins or whatever else and you record that inside of it, and I've talked before about how they've managed to mess up occasionally when I've been traveling, changes in time zones for how, when you should be taking your pills and whether you're going hour forward or back or further. But a new part to the interface is if you take more than one a day, normally, previously in iOS 17, if you say you've taken a pill, it will colour in a little sort of circle on your diary, 15th, 16th, 17th, took the pill, tick, effectively. It just fills in a solid colour to say that you're done. They've changed that behaviour now, where if you haven't completed all the medications for the day, they half fill it, so you get a visual cue that you haven't taken everything yet that you're meant to have taken. I haven't seen any reviewers talking about this anywhere, and I just think it's a really nice little feature that they're reminding you visually, not just by picking up a reminder on the screen to say, this medication is due or whatever, but they're actually giving you the visual guide to that inside of the interface too.
Yeah, that is quite good actually. I've never really looked at much of the health stuff. I should do that.
Why would you?
Yeah, fair point. I should probably log when I take paracetamol and ibuprofen for my dodgy knee. So I'd be curious to know how many I consume in a week.
Yeah, it could be something worth checking out because it's most reviewers of Apple things are young and healthy and don't have much wrong with them. So, it's old crusty people like me that you need to get in there. And I know I'm not, Jason Snell, for example, is older than me, and I'm sure he makes use of these kinds of things too. It's an interesting thing that they are actually sort of showing some love to sort of the undiscovered parts of the platform that other people rely on. So I think it's good to see.
No, it is good. And it's little things like that Apple always used to be really good at, those little, sometimes whimsy, sometimes just nice little attention to details, and I think they've lost a little bit of it.
I agree. Something else that they might be losing is a little bit of money to this Chinese company called QiiCon. Have you seen this? The link in the show notes?
I hadn't seen it until you put it in the notes, but I did go and have a look at it, and I was confused to begin with of what am I looking at here, and then you kind of go through it, and it's like they've kind of taken both Apple monitors and munged them into one, whether it's the Pro Display XDR or the Studio Display, which I have. And it looks fantastic. They've just lifted the design, which is obviously not great. Weirdly, it just takes a figure of 8 power as well, which is nice to see. And then, it's got lots of ports on it. And the industrial design is literally Apple. It'd be interesting to know what the build quality is like. But they've obviously got design cues from somewhere.
So just to take a step back, this is the QiiCon G27P, which is a 27-inch Retina 5K display with 600 nits of brightness. That's the exact panel, I think, that's in the Studio Display.
Sounds about right.
Yep. The stand is sold separately, because of course it is. It retails for, you can have it in two different sort of forms, as Chris has said. You can have a plain metal back, or you can have a perforated metal back. And the perforated metal back is the same perforations that you get on the XDR and the Mac Pro. It's got the sort of weird, sort of almost Mercedes-looking little design in the middle of it, in the perforations. That'll cost you another $100 or so, though. The standard one's $1,099 and the perforated one's $1,149, so the perforations cost you. However, a stand is only $49 for the non-adjustable one or $99 for the height-adjustable one. So that sounds like a bit of a bargain to me, actually. If you think it's the same panel as a Studio Display, and a Studio Display will run you £1,500 and more if you want the height-adjustable one.
I completely agree. I love my studio display. Like I said, I would want to know what the build quality is actually like, but this looks fantastic.
It does. They do a range of screens. They're all obviously designed very much with Apple at the forefront. So they do a 5K 34-inch one as well, the Qualcomm G34W. But I just think this was really interesting. I came across it on Mastodon I think he's the guy that runs Panic. I forget his name off the top of my head.
Cable?
He's got who? Sorry,
Cable.
Cable. Yeah, who buys stuff like this. He's obviously got more money than too much money, but he's got a real interest in 5K screens, and he wants to find something sort of cost comparable, or at least quality comparable with what Apple sell. And he came across this lot, and it does look on the surface of it like a good deal, and would fit in well with your Apple products.
Yeah, and most people wouldn't know it's not the Apple one. Like
No.
By the looks of it, if you glance at it, it looks like the Apple one.
Yeah. So I'm quite interested in this. I'm going to keep this in the back of my mind as I'm shopping around looking for screens and things like that, because 5K is sort of the sweet spot for Mac stuff.
100%. 5K is amazing. Would definitely recommend. I'm waiting to see. I'm assuming Apple at some point are going to bring out a new Mac Studio, and I reckon they will do a refreshed Studio display screen. That's what I'm hoping for. I will be annoyed if they just carry on selling exactly the same one with no price drop. And I think they've got room to keep the current one around at a much cheaper price point, and then bring out the Studio Display 2 or whatever you want to call it, and that could obviously go at a higher price point.
Yep, I think that's fair. Last story then, unless I've missed something out, is just a little thing by Federico Viticci on the slow decline of the Apple cult. And I don't need to go into this in lots of detail. You can see our last 15 shows on our feelings towards Apple, and like I say, I'm going to be more positive, but I thought it was interesting. He's done quite a good job, him and Matt Birchler, who we've talked about a few times recently as well, on the change in perspective for Apple, away from people just slavishly agreeing with everything the company did when they were the plucky underdog, to now they are the big corporate giant now. They are the shark, they're not the minnow at this point, and how our perspectives are having to change as a consequence of that. And you see that reflected in podcast hours, podcasts like ATP, Upgrade, and everybody is now beginning to reflect this change in attitude towards the company. And I think it's good that you see actually these things written down now that sort of reflect that too.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it, if I'm honest, the cult of Apple, as it were, because it was quite a thing, people having tattoos and having the Apple logo cut in the back of their head or whatever it may be, and like when we had Apple Macs back in the early 2000s, there was still the cult of Apple. Obviously, you joined it way before me, but you stood out because you had an Apple Mac. Yeah, you had a MacBook, or an iBook as it was back then, and then the iPod started coming. Then obviously the phones came, and then the MacBooks, and and now you're the odd one out if you haven't got a MacBook, because your home laptop is completely pivoted, especially in the home space. But it is interesting how it died over, it's died over a period of time, and it's kind of just been forgotten a little bit, the cult of Mac. But I hadn't really thought about it at all. We've slowly just aged out of it, I guess. And it was only when they brought it up, I thought, oh yeah, I'd forgot that was a thing, wasn't it? And you were the odd one out because you had Apple products, whereas now you're the odd one out if you don't. Like if you see somebody with an Android phone, you're like, why have you got an Android phone? I thought everybody had an iPhone.
Yeah. This goes back to a book by Leander Cahey, I think I'm saying his name right, who was a journalist too. And very famously, the cover of the book is somebody with an Apple logo shaved into their head. And you could see the similarities with the cult. You had the prophetic leader, Steve Jobs. You had all the sort of products that we'd all slavishly go and buy. We'd do as we were told. We wouldn't customize our desktops. We wouldn't customize our phones. We wouldn't customize our iPods because Steve knew best and the company knew best. And we toed the line, and we spent the money, and we did that, and we defended them. Advocated for them, we evangelized them, and that's changed. It has very much changed as they've grown, as their, again, I'm trying to stay positive, as their desire for stakeholder engagement is higher than for consumer developer engagement, or consumer wonder, perhaps might be a better way of saying it. I just thought it's quite an apt article really for what we've been talking about recently.
I completely agree with you. Like I said, I think. Yeah, we've obviously grown up. Half my life I've been using Apple equipment, and we've been into it. We've obviously changed, and Apple's changed massively in that period. Like you say, from being the underdog, And I don't think we ever envisaged that they would go from where they were to where they are today. You know, they've had quite a journey over the last, circa 24 years. I guess it's really 2000 onwards, isn't it? Of Steve Jobs coming back and the company changing direction. Yeah, it is interesting to look back. And like I say, you're not the odd one out anymore.
You're not. I'll finish the thought, and I'm sure it'll come up again, but just by quoting from the link document, it's a pretty dark place to be when Apple's biggest long-time fans are hoping that the US government will step in to stop them from doing multiple things that they're doing today. Isn't that weird that you're rooting for the government over Apple?
It's a fair point, though, isn't it? It is a really fair point.
It really is. Okay, back to positive stuff. App of the week.
Go on then, what have you got?
I've got Grab2Text, which is a little free utility that lives up in the menu bar of your Mac. You just click on it and it will select text from anything. Now, I know some of this is built into the operating system already. If you fire up preview, you can quite often select text out of images and things like this. But this is great. If you've got some low resolution capture or screenshot of something that's in the corner, you can just select Grab2Text, drag over it, and you can copy and paste it in. It's fantastic. It's I wouldn't say it saved my neck, but it's just saved me typing lots of things lots of times. Great little utility. Grab2Text.
Yeah, do you know what? That looks kind of cool. I like the look of that.
It's great. It's almost worth having a Mac for.
Yeah, maybe. I'd love to get these utilities on the iPad. They need to come up with some sort of menu bar style form of app.
Well, maybe in the EU they'll let you.
The EU has to impose it. Be brilliant.
It does. Thing of the week.
So I've just put in a mini projector. So my son wanted a projector. We looked and we scoured. This one's a bit more expensive than what we paid. I think we got it on a deal for about 50 quid at the time. It's currently on at £90. It's got £50 off voucher. But this is a great little thing. We've watched a few films on it. It's 1080p predominantly. It says 4K, but I never really understand. It's a 4K projector, but it's native 1080p. So it seems to run best at 1080p. But it's just a great little projector. You wouldn't want to watch all your finest movies on it all the time. But for something for my son to use with his mates while they want to watch a film or something, it's just a great bit of kit. Plug the iPad into it with a USB-C to HDMI connector, and we were straight off to the races. Works great with his laptop. Came with a little tripod. It just seemed a reasonable amount of projector for not a huge amount of money, because you never know how much you're going to use these things. We've used it before to put Eurovision on in our dining room. When we had friends around just for a bit of fun, you can have the Eurovision up there where you're having a few drinks. It's just a great little device, like I say, for not a lot of money, because it's not something you're going to use all the time. So that was my thing of the week.
I had something like this corporately. So when you're doing stands and displays and all that kind of stuff, you don't always want to take a big TV with you because they take up a lot of space. And it worked really well for a little period of time. But then just one day, the bulb started going speckly and it died while we were our sort of biggest event at, I think we're in Stockholm at the time. No, we're in Germany.
Don't tell me that.
It kind of left me in the lurch a little bit. But at the same time, when it worked, it was a great little device, and they are quite handy little things for stuff like that. And I think the use you're putting it to it makes absolute sense. By 4K, I guess they mean you can feed 4K into it and all downscale it to 1080p.
Yeah, that was my view.
Yeah.
Because he was looking at one for 720, which was, I don't know, £10 cheap, and I was like, I'd rather spend marginally more money and just get the next one up. But he's at that age, he's experimenting with different tech, and I'm trying to encourage him in the right ways, I guess.
Yeah, probably plug his Raspberry Pi into this and do his coding on a wall.
Yeah, well, he's had everything going on it, because he's had his gaming laptop on it, he's had his regular laptop on it, his phone, he's tried out all devices.
Yeah, projectors and gaming's not great. The lag is large.
Yeah, he just likes to lie in bed and watch YouTube on it when it's broadcast onto the ceiling.
Fair enough. I think we can call that a show, Chris.
Yeah, I think we're done. So if anybody wants to get in contact with us, you can contact Rod at g5maniac@mastodon.scot, or I am at _CGP at mastodon.social. You can watch on YouTube by going to wakefromsleep.com and clicking on the YouTube link, or you can drop us an email, wakefromsleep@protonmail.com.
Talk to you next week, Chris.
Cheers, Rod.